Nal, and it's really good to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you. And to get us started off, tell us more about yourself and about your game.
Great, thanks. So I'm James Fazio. I started a game company around the game Regency, which it was really just an idea that my wife and I've had. We're entrepreneurial, and a year ago, during just as the pandemic was like setting in, and we're like, what are we going to do for, she was looking for something to do. Actually, she'd waitressed before, and she was thinking about getting back into waitressing, and, kind of part-time. And we were just looking at the different things that we did. And I'm an educator in higher education, seminary professor. And so I've got a pretty full plate, and we have 4 kids, ages 7 to 17. Mm-hmm. So we've got a lot going on. But we were thinking, what's something that we can do, especially where we're at in our phase in life, with all the kids. So we're 6 in the home, that we can, leverage what we're doing, leverage kind of, just how we live life right now. We're game players. All of our kids are kind of, we have to choose games appropriate, for like, who's based on who's playing. But, and then of course, all it takes is they have some friends over, or we have some friends over, we have one other family over, and all of a sudden we're ready to like play a big group game, So we're saying, how can we kind of, use this time that we don't know how long this time is going to be, but it looks like it's not going to be a real, we didn't really buy into the 14 days to flatten the curve kind of idea. You could kind of see the handwriting on the wall, and we said, could be 6 months, could be a year, could be who knows. Let's make the most of this time. And that's when, we've, like I said, we've played games kind of our whole lives. I've been married for 23 years. We're just celebrating our wedding anniversary right now. Valentine's Day was our
wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we've, games have been a big part of our, life together. We always say, the couple that plays together stays together, the family that plays together. It's really important to us that we have good experiences, good times. It was important for my wife and I, it's important for us with the kids, education, and everything. We just like to incorporate having a good time in what we do, because you enjoy better, you learn better when you're enjoying. There's so many opportunities for development, even in raising a family around the game table, so many experiences to learn, so many disappointments to simulate, so many obstacles to overcome. All of that. And we just took it all and just said, let's do this as a family with our kids. So much of our lives and things we've done up to this point was done before they were, old enough to know. And so it's like, well, let's just step into like uncharted territory. We've not done game design before in Kickstarter and everything that goes into that. So it's like they get to see us be novices. I'm a PhD, and I do, I'm a professor, and I'm an author, and I'm a speaker, and things like that. And it's established in one field, and yet watching us just step our toes in the water of a completely different field where we don't know what to expect. And, it's what we try to tell our kids. As they're becoming teenagers and going into, my oldest daughter now is in college, and we're saying, this is just how you step out and do new things and take some bumps and figure out what you want to do. And we see it as something that we could embrace together as a family and do together. So that's kind of the big picture of how we started about a year ago in our company, and then with our game, specifically Regency, which we'll talk more about.
Yeah, I really love that you're pretty much leading by example right now, right? It's not just like do what I say, but you're just showing them that it's okay to try new things. Like, if you're passionate about something, if you're interested in something, try it. Why not? Go out there, learn about it, immerse yourself, and just kind of do it, which I absolutely love. That you're showing through your actions there. And you mentioned too that you have an entrepreneurial background. Can you tell us more about that and how your journey kind of led to this from entrepreneurship in general too?
Sure. So my wife and I, we've always been very kind of just business minded. and looking for opportunities. It goes back to, and we've done that with gaming. I mean, back to, for us, Magic the Gathering, when that first came out. And for us, it was like, we love this game. We love, collecting the cards. We love building the decks. I love doing the tournaments. My wife, not so much. I mean, she definitely did tournaments too, but for her, she liked the, opening the packs, like trading. I mean, so she ended up kind of more like making a business, like we'd go to tournaments, like weekly tournaments, local tournaments. We live in San Diego, so there was a lot going on in town. LA wasn't very far away. And so, and she would love everything from, opening packs, selling cards. This is before the days of internet, like, I mean, it's just the early days of Magic the Gathering. So there wasn't ways, you trade and you sell and you do everything at your local scene. And so, she wanted to like get a reseller's license and really get into just doing Magic, and we did that for a little while, for a couple of years. And that was fun. But the idea was that always just kind of goes hand in hand. Cause like I said, I mean, who doesn't love the game? I mean, I think we all love, we love gaming, but it's like, is this just going to be a hobby, or is this going to be something that we can do that we can really justify the time commitment that we want to spend? I mean, if it's a hobby, we all have so many hours that we can commit to hobbies. But look at how many hours we have that we can commit to work, different streams of income, things like that. I mean, family time, relationship time. I mean, so you look at all these things and we say, well, all of a sudden you take all these different things and we could put a lot of gaming time if it's relationship building, if it's business building, if it's, things like that. I mean, even just creating we buy a lot of games, create a company, and now you've got, that's part of our business. It's part of our tax, like these are now all the games we buy are tax write-off, just things like that, where you just realize incorporating business and everything into your game and your hobby allows you to do your hobby a whole lot more. So.
Wow. Yeah. I love that, how you can kind of mesh two things, right? Because if you're doing something as a business that you don't like, then you don't enjoy it. But now that you're able to like put in business and fun, you can do this for, like you were saying, with more time and also more enjoyment and more entertainment too.
Yeah.
And from here, right, Regency. How did you settle on Regency as your first kind of debut game for this company? What is
Great
Regency about?
Okay, so Regency is a tableau builder, and it's a mechanic that everybody's very familiar with, and fun and accessible. People know what it is usually, But the idea is we wanted something that was well, for one, we knew that we were going to be starting our business based on the Kickstarter model, so we needed to kickstart a game, and we needed to begin modest. I mean, if the goal is a company, the starting point is like a step. And so we said Regency is like a great step for us because it's a card game. It's a small box game, basically. I mean, it's not a heavy, big box. It's not this overambitious thing, and it allows us to, with a lower price point, to figure out the business, figure out the industry, marketing, kickstarting, fulfillment, the delivery, everything. Just figure it out on a manageable scale. And so that was a part of just the business decision of let's start with this kind of game. The other thing was it's a very approachable game. It's easy to introduce people to, and for us, we wanted a game that we could share our hobby with other people. So, I mean, we've got friends, we've got people who we know, that we would like to introduce our hobby to. And, you can't always do that with a big box game. So we wanted kind of a gateway game, because then it's if people play games, great, they'll like it. If they don't play games, great. Do you got 20 minutes? Let me show you something. If you see if you like it, you can figure it out real quick if you do or don't. And so we wanted something that was very approachable in terms of setup, length of time to play. These were all factors that we considered because we had several games and we were like prototyping a couple different games. Right now we've played several with our friends, but this really felt like it's a good place to start. The other thing about Regency is it's a civilization themed game. It's a historical, but it's not set in one period of history or one culture. We wanted to diversity of historical figures throughout all of time, and so Regency
I think I've lost you for a second here, James. Oh, well, we just lost James for a second there. If you are tuning in, I believe James will be reconnecting. In the meantime, just FYI that we are talking to James Fazio about his game Regency, and hopefully his internet comes back up. In the meantime, if there's any questions you have for me or for James, feel free to leave it in the comments or like kind of chat it in, and we'll be able to respond to those questions when he comes back on. Anyway, other than that, right? It's me. Hi, it's Nalin, and just here behind the screen. Oh, James is back.
Sorry.
Hey, James.
Connectivity issue. I saw that. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. You were saying that Regency has a lot of characters from different backgrounds, different historical periods, and that's where we lost you.
And that was really important for us, is just featuring the interesting. I mean, I'm a history teacher, and so I really enjoy. To me, there's nothing more interesting and nothing that we can learn more from than studying our history. And when I say our history, I just mean human history. I mean, understanding peoples and cultures and just the human journey throughout the centuries. And so highlighting that in a game is, number one, I mean, history is, at least in some way, familiar to us all. It's a shared cast of characters, especially the history's great rulers and things like that. And so it's a familiar setting. It's fun. And so we just thought, imagine kind of like, Unmatched or some of these games that'll like put different, characters, pit them against each other. We thought, what if like, Genghis Khan took on Elizabeth I, or, Alexander the Great took on, Cleopatra, or, you just mesh these things together throughout history. And so it's a civilization themed game with familiar characters, and you're competing to build your tableau to become the greatest ruler of all time. And that's, everybody's competing in a game to be first place, to be top dog. And so in this one, it's, you pick a character who's a ruler of history that's recognizable, everybody knows. And then in this one, which one of us will be supreme of the people seated at this table? And so that's it. Maybe what's a little bit different about it, though, is it's a much more interactive game. So whereas a lot of tableau builders usually have a player who's very focused on what's going on right in front of them, and maybe a common area that they're drafting from, or things like that, as that. But this plays on the theme of the power struggle and we all have a dog in this hunt. Like we all, like if you're gaining, I'm watching what you're doing, because that's going to impact me, because we're all going for first. And so that means, and the game is very simple. Rather than a scoring method at the end where you total up your points, it's the first regent to complete their fiefdom, which would be their kingdom, basically, of all the different citizens that they're trying to attract to their fiefdom. The first regent to do that and complete with a full diverse cast of different types of characters, and each character contributes something different. So as you're bringing these different characters into your fiefdom, your power is expanding and your ability to take action actions is increasing, and so you are gaining in power. And then of course it kind of reaches this tipping point. So there's this gradual, like, you add a person and cool, now I can do new things. You add another, now I can do new things, and you add a third. And so as this begins to go, your power and your ability to perform actions is expanding. And then of course others take notice. You get to this point. Others are like, well, I'm not so sure I like you doing that. I'd much rather have that military commander in my fiefdom. So let me, try to attract your citizen over here. And there's the various ways that they can do that based on the composition of their fiefdom. So, as a merchant, they could maybe try to buy them away, or as a brigand, they could abduct them away. I mean, so there's this diverse cast of characters that you're expanding, and the first one to complete their fiefdom with all 6 cast of characters wins. So it just, you can see it happening. They're at 4, they're going to get 5, 6, and so it's a very interactive game, and that makes it different because you're not just paying attention to what's going on in front of you. You absolutely have to be aware of what's going on everywhere at the table at all times. So it's not the kind of game that people play while holding their phone in their hand, which is a trend I see more and more. They're like playing a game on an app while they're waiting to take their turn at a tabletop game. And I'm like, wow, this isn't quite working the way it should. We should be engaged with one another, even if for a short period of time, where we're, interacting and we're engaged in this shared activity. And that's to me, I mean, that's one of the greatest goals of games, whether it's, so I should add to that then. So there's not a solo play mode in Regency. It's not really a solitaire game. That's not the way it's designed. It's just an interactive game. And so that means you're playing with the people at the table as a focus more than you're playing the game. You're playing, with your community there.
Yeah, and I can see that each game that you play can be very different according to which character you get dealt and which kind of characters other people get dealt, and how other people choose to interact with you, steal your characters, or kind of move characters or bring in characters to their fiefdom as the game progresses too. So there's going to be a lot of replayability there too.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And from here, one of the main questions that I had when I saw Regency at first, right? I love that there's such a diverse cast of characters. How did you pick the main core characters in the game? Because there's so many leaders out there from so many places around the world.
There are. So
how'd you pick? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So diversity was definitely something we had in mind. In other words, we didn't just want a bunch of European rulers, even though history, you look at, well, we wanted recognizable figures. I mean, people who they could look at a piece of art and right away, even if they've never seen before, they say, oh, that's Elizabeth, or that's, Alexander the Great, or, I mean, they're just recognizable. Julius Caesar, you look at it, Cleopatra. I mean, those kinds of instantly recognizable, so that there's this attraction, like, oh, I know those. I know who they are. Like, there's no explanation needed. The visual represents itself. However, we knew that it was important to have a different cast of characters too. I mean, it's like, these people, but do you know these people? And so, again, getting back to sort of the education part of it, is let's also introduce figures who are very, very famous globally, and maybe not so much. I mean, if we've had world history, maybe we came across a name, but like the uniter of the Indian Empire, Ashoka the Great, one of the greatest rulers of history, but based on when he lived in history, much longer ago, and doesn't usually factor into Western history. So a lot of rulers from the world of Islam, and Suleiman the Magnificent, or Mansa Musa, the first of the Mali Empire. You've got these different figures that people are less familiar with, or you go over. You've got like Wu Zetian, figures. Of course, some many people know Genghis Khan, right? So mix of people that you could look at and say, I know who that is, but I don't know who that is. But man, they look interesting. And so, obviously, having representation of female rulers was important. I have when we sit down to play a game, it's like, well, what characters are we going to pick? And so having female options is always fun for them. Game that's very much more a gateway game and approachable for a lot of people to play, and we're all introducing games to new people, and we want, I mean, a lot of the character, and it's always who do they pick, you know? I mean, you know, we've got William Wallace or somebody like that, somebody, or Richard the Lionheart. I mean, a lot of identifiable ones, but at the same time, we really wanted to say, these are some interesting people. We put the Queen of Sheba in there, or King Henry Avery, you know? So we looked at like history and said, you know, who do right now? And one of the things is we kind of wanted to keep adding more and more, and we said, okay, well, look, it's okay. We've kind of hit our threshold. But man, it's fun. So we ended up, you know, based on all of these areas of history and cultures, we said, well, now let's recruiting citizens, and there's a lot of different people you're bringing in. Let's keep this continuity throughout the game. So, for instance, Queen Isabella I of one of the regents that you can choose, she was known as like Isabella the Catholic. She was a very famous religious. So the other thing is each of the regents have, you know, whatever they're known for, whether it's, you know, Arthur or different characters, different, you know, kind of prowesses or special.
Uh-oh. James, I think we're losing
But
you
we
for a little bit
realized,
again. James.
Okay, are we live? Are we good?
Yes, I
Hello?
lost you for a little bit towards the end there, but you are back now. James, can you hear me?
Oh, forgive me. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Are we?
Hello? Oh no, internet connection issues. Let's see if we can get this fixed, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to try something to make sure we have a more stable connection here.
All right.
Are we good?
It says green here on my side, so I think for now we're good.
Okay. So what I would say is we looked at our cast of characters and we said, well, what are people that they interacted with, famous figures that they interacted with? So like in the case of Isabella I, she's famous for sponsoring Christopher Columbus's voyage to the New World. So we said, okay, well, let's throw Christopher Columbus in there as a citizen that you can recruit to your fiefdom. And so we looked at all the different characters, not just the rulers, but the people who that many of them associated with over history. And so got all those cultures and all those time periods thrown into this game. And yeah, I mean, it's a bit of I mean, it's kind of like a you know, fantasy football, you know, fantasy baseball, where you're drafting from all, you know, or the greatest from all of time, you know, so kind of spanning through all of history to grab together and just, but it makes it fun, it makes it cohesive, and you know, the one thing that they all have in common is they were all seeking to be the greatest, and so there it is. There's your game, you know.
Love it. This sounds really exciting. And before we get to some of the other questions here that I have listed, when is this going to be live on Kickstarter?
Tomorrow. It launches February 16th, Tuesday, tomorrow morning. So, yeah.
Love it. What time tomorrow?
I'm looking forward to it. 6 a.m. Pacific time, which is where I'm at. So that 9 Eastern, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay, February 16th at 6 a.m. Pacific. Okay, love it. Okay, and some other questions I had for you today too is from all of this, right? What are kind of the challenges or any failures that you faced along the way as you were building this, working with your family, you know, getting all this up during the pandemic? Like, talk to us about some challenges that you've had and what you did to overcome them.
Okay. Hey, well, yeah, there's always in everything you do, and you know, it's best to plan for them, expect them. You know, it's kind of like when you can either plan to hit all the green lights, or you can expect expect that, you're going to hit red lights and
Mm-hmm.
put that in your plan. So, we knew that we were kind of entering uncharted territory for us, because we're entering into an industry of game design, and we've loved playing games our whole lives. I've loved designing games. I mean, my whole life has been largely, if I want to play games, I kind of have to. And from the earliest, I was raised in a very fundamentalist home that didn't really think maybe you should have a good time, or a lot of games are kind of have evil themes or things like that. And so it's like, well, so if I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, which is what we did, which is what I mean, that's like what you do when you're when I was a kid. I couldn't buy a book because there was a lot of stigma attached to Dungeons and Dragons, especially in Christian communities. And I mean, it was pretty far reaching. I mean, everybody thought, yeah, this is kind of we don't know about. And so I thought, oh, I want to play. Can't buy the game off a shelf and play it, but it's a role-playing game. You play with words where we tell stories, and we so we had to kind of build our own. So we'd go to school, play with my friends, and we'd we're like, well, I think this is just how you system. We didn't know how to roll the dice and what distance was and how many spaces on the map. So it was like, but we can play Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like, we've got imaginations, we've got words, we've got stories to tell, we can play. And so that was always just something that we've done. We wanted to create games. I've done it my whole life. Most recently, in the last few years, I mean, we entered a phase of child raising. And so, we didn't have as much available time to play games until we got all of our kids out of diapers. And now they're old enough to play games. And then we're like, guys, let's do this as a family engagement, as a family activity. And of course, the kids loved it. And so it allowed us the opportunity to get into game design, which I've always done. And I'll just kind of a word to that. For me, one of the things most recently, the last few years, was Conan. The Conan game by Monolith. Conan was a Kickstarter game, really successful. By Monolith company also came out with Batman, and so they had a couple of different pretty big products, funded millions. And of course, I've always loved the Conan property, and so jumped on Conan and got everything Conan. And for me, it was like Dungeons and Dragons, but just like the combat. It's almost like just running combat, from D&D. So, skip the town, skip the role playing, just lay out the map. There's Conan, there's the bad guys, go. What do you do? And so, but the point of it is that it provided a game with hundreds of miniatures, a rule system, and tons of maps, tons of features, and the ability to build your own scenarios. So I would play the game and yet feel like, oh, well, that was really unbalanced. I felt like, because it's a one versus many, so that was the way the game was designed. So you're kind of like, you're one player, kind of like D&D, except my obstacle is to actively play against you, not facilitate, your playing of the game. So in a situation like that, if there's imbalance, it really stands out. I mean, it's like, we're not going to have a great game because there is a disparity of power. Like, you have your abilities, I have mine. And so the balancing was really important. And so I had to play a lot of those games and realize that it just didn't work. And I could do better. And that's always the idea. I can do better. I could tweak this. So that several years ago, started doing that. Really got me into, again, and I started putting a lot of time into it, developing these scenarios, putting together campaigns that I could play with my friends and have people over and we play. And my wife said, can we sell those? Because they seem better than, some of the ones, and I'm like, well, no, it's not our property, not our, it's just, we just put them out there for the community, put them up, post them on boards, everybody can play them. You can get thousands of downloads, but it's all free. I mean, that's just what it is. That's the nature of it. It's their game. We're just part of the community creating content. So it's like, cool, but it could be better. So, that's where we said, yeah, let's look at starting our own games, starting our own company. You asked specifically about like failure or things like, the obstacles that we encountered. And at that point, it's like, okay, but there's so much we don't know. So where do we go to even just figure this out? Because let's face it, like if you want to get into game design, this is sort of a recurring theme, comes up a lot. You have to kind of be an expert at everything, or just join an existing team. But it's not just I'll design a good game and cool, my job's done. I mean, if you want to do that, yeah, pitch your game. You're a game designer, but you're not a game publisher. If you want to be a game publisher, well, whose games are you going to publish? Well, now you're a game designer and a game publisher, but that's never going to work, as you know so well, without marketing. So now you're a game marketer, and and then hats go on and on of things you need to do to do this, and it's like I need to wear at least 10, 12 hats, and no matter how good you are at any one or two or six of those things, there are many that you're just not going to be good at, probably ever. We can all get better, but I mean, let's face it, like, the idea of one person just running everything is just, you're not going to be as well. You're not going to do as well if you can, incorporate other people, get other people involved. And so that's where team building is really important. Networking, and I know that's where you come in, and so many others who I've benefited from in the networks, the Facebook groups, the communities where you can, the podcasts, everything that you can plug into. And that's just the one thing I realize is, you've got to avail yourself of everything out there. And people are, we rise together. We, as gamers, as just the gaming community takes off, as people become more interested in, tabletop games or alternative, tabletop simulator, things like this. We benefit kind of collectively, and the community understands that, and it works together to try to encourage one another, support one another, and so learning that over the year and getting plugged in and reaching out to people and everything is just, the way I've overcome so many of those personal shortcomings that where it's like, I can't do this. I can't, marketing is a big one, and just saying, okay, how much time am I going to put into this? Or can I just talk to somebody who's a marketer? And you've got to figure out the extent to which you're going to collaborate. You almost have to think, who am I going to collaborate with and on what things? It's not, am I going to collaborate? Because we need each other. That's really important for us to understand.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of entrepreneurs get to that point too, like kind of what you were saying, where they just keep thinking, how do I do this? But rather than thinking how, thinking who is best suited to doing this is kind of the better question. Change from the how to the who, so that you were saying, so you can collaborate with people who, are in the community who, have that knowledge, have that expertise, have that know-how that can also help you along the way. And I love that you really talked about that, diving in, learning everything, but also knowing where you can, pair up or work with other people too, and not go it alone pretty much. And from here, right, I want to really ask this question because you have this firsthand experience so far, right? The campaign was launched already once, right? It didn't reach its funding goal. It almost got there. It didn't reach its funding goal. And then you decide to, close everything down, and then you're redoing this again. What kind of advice do you have for people coming to crowdfunding for the first time, trying to understand, like you're saying, learning the ropes and learning what to do and like trying to collaborate? Like, what kind of just advice do you have for people?
Well, you have to be strong. I mean, you have to be just mentally, you just have to persevere. You have to know that going in. And that's conventional wisdom on anything. But the point is, the process itself is arduous. It will weed out, anybody who's not willing to tough it out. And I mean, you've got to believe in your product, and of course you've got to be open to, those who can speak into, what's working, what's not. Again, a problem with independent, game designers, developers, publishers is, I mean, there's kind of this little echo chamber of the head where you're just talking and you're like, well, this is cool, and you're convinced of it, but you've got to, that's where you really have to trust the community a lot more and be open to collaboration and how essential that is, because, you've got to be able to say, well, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe this theme isn't working. Maybe this, and nobody likes to hear that, but you've got to, I mean, that's what you have to hear. That's the more important thing to hear than, attaboy, good job, this is great, I mean, and that comes cheap and easy. And so it's not as easy, and especially, people don't want to, I think generally speaking, people don't want to be critical, I mean, obviously you've got your trolls or your whatever, but, typically, especially in these communities, I mean, when people give a criticism, it's usually well-deserved. And of course, one thing I know, like as a teacher, when a student asks a question, it probably reflects the question that's going on in many other students' heads. And you have to know that like when one person posts something, it's easy to say, well, that's just one person. But it's like, well, but hundreds of people may have read that, but one person said something. So that really, you've got to listen to what people are saying, and not dismiss, not treat it like, well, I know better. And I think there's that tendency to just sort of dismiss, like, well, that's just one person's this or that, or so we really have to be receptive. We have to be open to criticism, and look, and committed with a goal of improving. We can't have this sort of dogged determination, which can be a virtue in pushing forward in something, but can also be a detriment if we can't adapt, adjust, and improve. And so we really need to hear from people, get the feedback that we need. And a lot of times the feedback we need is the very things, and I just kind of use this as a rule of thumb, like if I don't like it, that's probably something you need to hear. I mean, it's like you can't just gravitate toward all the things you like, because you kind of got that covered. And that's great. If somebody says something praiseworthy, it feels good, and that's great. But the things you hear that you don't like, I always say that's what you need to take to heart. At least consider that. So a lot of the obstacles just really are the things that are common to the human experience and what we need to do to improve and to really embrace opportunities. And to realize, like when somebody experiences your game, or sees your ad or gives you a comment, I mean, I had a lot of different feedback, and I would put stuff out there on your Facebook group and other places and try to get feedback from people. And a lot of times heard things I didn't want to hear. And and you have to say, that's why I asked, I didn't ask just to get, I mean, I'll ask my mom if I just want encouragement, but if I'm coming to the community, I want your wisdom, and you've got to embrace that. And wherever it goes, especially when it goes somewhere you don't want it to. So I think that overcoming the challenges is a lot of times just the way we respond to those things that maybe make us a little uncomfortable, and know that the goal is to improve, to put out a great product, to get people to engage with that product, and to just have good shared experiences. And I don't know every step to get there that's necessary in order to get to that destination. And so that's where we have to be open to receiving from those who can give us input on how to improve that.
I love that, being open to feedback and really just kind of doing better and continuous improvement, pretty much like being 1% better every day and doing a little bit better every day by just hearing what people say and taking that in and really making sure that you listen to people rather than just saying, no, that's different from what I want to hear. That's not what I should take into account. So I really love that. And I'm super excited for the launch that's coming tomorrow. And again, it's tomorrow, February 16 at 6 a.m. Pacific. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. And where can people, find out more about the game for tomorrow?
Yeah. Okay. So peakgames.com is our company website. And on the homepage, you'll find it, and banners and everything. It'll take you straight to Regency. So we've got a landing page, gives all the, with videos, playthrough videos, kind of reviews, stuff like that. And then of course tomorrow we'll have the full Kickstarter page up, which will have everything on it.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, James, just to come chat with us about the game, how you got to game design, and everything else in between too. And very excited for Regency. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nolan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.